We're going to go ahead and get started with our Fin 9.2 overview session. And let me click the next slide and introduce ourselves. So I'm one of your hosts, Michael Edwards. I'm a multimedia designer, and I also help run our webinars. And our trainer today will be Lisa Vlad. She's our finance learning specialist. So just so you can put some faces to these voices. A few things before we get started. For one, we have a handout you can download. So if you check the handout section of the GoToWebinar control panel, you can download a PDF which has 4 things you should know about the Fin 9.2 upgrade. And also, during certain parts of the webinar, we will have open questions, and you can use this box at the bottom of that panel. And we'll remind you again when it gets to that time where we have some open questions. If you have any audio problems, if your Wi-Fi connection or your computer's connection isn't the greatest, you can also call in via phone. So if you use this phone number and access code, you can listen over a phone. So if that works out better for you, definitely check it out. And if you change your mind later in the webinar, this info is in the email that got sent out to you about the webinar. So you can go find that if you need to call in. We're also recording this webinar, and we've actually already recorded it in the past. We have a recording available, so if you want to share this out to colleagues or friends who missed this, or if you just want to review this information later, that'll be on the website, and we'll talk about where you can find that stuff on the website later on. We're also going to have some interactive polls today to hopefully make this a little more engaging than just a bunch of information. So let's try one of these right now. So I'm going to launch a poll here. What campus are you from? See, about half of you have already voted. 80%. Give the stragglers a few more seconds. All right, I'm going to close the poll and we can check the results. So it looks like about half of you from Boulder, about a third of you are from Anschutz, and then the last, 17% or so are sprinkled across Denver, the Springs, and the system. All right, I'm going to go back to our slides. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Lisa, and we'll get started.
Thanks, Mike. So you may be asking, well, why are we here? And the reason why we're here is because on December 10th, we're transitioning to PeopleSoft Fin 9.2. So there's just 4 things that I want y'all to be able to describe at the end of this today. And those 4 things are the General Ledger Work Center, changes and new features to favorites, workflow and work lists, and then finally the new ways that you're going to look things up in 9.2. So I love this cartoon. It says, what if we don't change it all and something magical just happens? So I just want us to take a moment and think about, we all understand the challenges that come with system implementations and upgrades. But if we didn't do this, we'd be missing out on some really neat new features, which is what we're going to be focusing on today. So your Work Center, you'll be able to see that on your screen in just a minute. But your Work Center is going to be where you're going to go to get your work done. When you first log into the system, it's going to be on the left-hand side of your page. And there's 4 sections to it split over 2 tabs. So this is what it's going to look like. The first time you log into 9.2, you'll see that you have your Work Center on the left-hand side of your screen. And it's going to stay there for you as you work throughout the system. If you ever need to minimize it, you can click these 2 little arrows up here at the top to minimize it and give you more room to work on the right. But if not, it's going to stay there for you as you work through the system. So there are 2 tabs. There's the Main tab and the Reports and Queries tab. On the Main tab, you're going to see 2 sections. You're going to see the My Work section and the Links section. So in the My Work section, here you can add links to places or things that you do on a monthly basis in the system. So here, for example, this user takes a look at all journals with errors on a monthly basis, and that's part of their monthly processing. You also have the Links section listed here. In the Links section, you're going to actually already see some links listed for you based on what users commonly use within the system. So if you don't see a link listed here to a place that you go within the system, you can actually add that to it So if you, for example, work in asset management, but you don't see that link listed here, you can add a link to asset management within the links section. You can also add links to places outside of the finance system as well. So now I'm going to turn it over to Mike and we're going to take a quick quiz.
So our first quiz is a true-false question. When I log into Fin 9.2, there will be links already listed for me in my links section. True or false? About 90% of you have voted. All right, let's see how you guys did. So 82% of you said true, and the other 18% said false. So Lisa will tell us the answer.
So the answer is true. When you log into 9.2, you'll already see some links listed in the links section for you. If you do things within the system that you don't see listed there, you can go ahead and add those to that section as well. And we'll show you how that works in just a little bit. And you can also add links to places that you go to outside of the finance system. The next tab that you have is your Reports and Queries tab. That contains exactly what it sounds like. You have a queries section and you have a report section. In the queries section, you may see some queries listed there for you. If you run queries that you don't see listed there, you can go ahead and add them to this section as well. And keep in mind, for those of you who use PeopleSoft queries, if you have any in 8.4 that you use, those will still be available to you in 9.2. When you run the query, you'll click on it from the left-hand side here, and the results will be displayed on the right-hand side. And again, this is where you can use the little arrows here to minimize the work center if you need to as you work through the system. The next and final section that you have is the Reports section. And in the Reports section, you may see links to reports that are commonly used. If you want to go ahead and run a report, you just click on the report name on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side is where you can enter the run control ID to go ahead and run that report. Now, I had mentioned that for all of these sections that if there's something, a place that you go to within the finance system that you don't see listed there for you, you can go ahead and add that. You can also add a link to a place outside of the system. And to do that, within each section, you'll see a drop-down menu in the upper right-hand corner of it, and you can click on this personalize link. When you personalize, there's two things that you can add here. You can add a group label, which think of that as a category, and then you can add the different links underneath it. So in this example, I wanted to add a category for reports to this and add a link to my reporting manager. When you go to add the link, you would click this define option, and then it's going to ask you what type of link that you're adding. If you're adding something within the finance system, you're going to select menu item. And if you're adding something outside of the finance system, you'll select URL to enter the website. Now you may be asking, well, what is the difference between favorites versus links in my work center? So for those of you who use favorites in 8.4, there really is no difference between favorites in 8.4 versus adding a link in your work center if it's a place within the finance system. So for example, if in favorites you have a link to create update journal entries, but you also have that link in your work center, when you click on it, the link, regardless of whether you're going from your favorites or the work center, is going to take you to the same place. The main big difference between the two is with your work center, when you add links to it, you can add links to places outside of the finance system. With favorites, you can only add places within the finance system, and that's the main difference between the two. Something to keep in mind is if you do use favorites in 8.4, they are not going to transition over to 9.2 for you. But before you start recreating your favorites, I would want you to take a step back and think about, well, do I want to re-add this to my favorites, or do I just want to add it as a link to my work center? For me, I would add it to my work center as I know personal preference, but that's just because the work center is always on the left-hand side of my screen. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and we're going to take a quick poll here.
All right, so our next poll question is what links would be helpful to see in My Links? And you can actually choose more than one answer with this poll. All right, a few more seconds. Okay, let's check the answers. So overwhelmingly, most of you thought learning resources and also somewhere in Fin you go often would be great options. And about half of you thought policies might be a useful link. All right, back to you, Lisa.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. So speaking of the learning resources page, I'm very hopeful that when we do go live in 9.2, you will actually already have that link listed for you to our website that will have links to our how-to videos and our guides. If it's not there, I would really recommend that you go ahead and add it. Now there is a new feature in favorites that you can see here on your screen. Is if you go to the favorites drop-down menu, it's still in the same place that it's in 8.4. But here you'll see your favorites that are listed here at the bottom, but on the top you see something that says recently used. Your recently used is going to list the last 5 places that you went to within the finance system, regardless of whether they're in your favorites. So that's always going to be there for you. So for example, if you log into 9.2 and you go to something and you don't add it to your work center and you don't add it to your favorites, and then the next time you log in you want to get to the same place, you can go ahead and click on that favorites and you'll see your recently used. So now we're going to go ahead and take a couple minutes for questions.
And just a reminder, you can use this little chat box at the bottom to type your questions up, and then we'll be able to see them. We do already have our first question, and it's sort of a comment. In a way, there are not as many changes as I sort of expected compared to HR or HCM, but I think the changes you're describing are good.
I appreciate that comment. So one of the questions I get a lot from people is, well, do you think training for this should be required? And I always say, well, of course, I'm a trainer, so I think training should always be required. But when it comes to just the basics of going from 8.4 to 9.2, you're going to see that it has the same look and feel, but there's just some really neat, really cool new features, which is what we're covering today.
Another question here is, are there any queries that will no longer be available?
Cal, can you answer that question? Are all the queries in 8.4 going to be available in 9.2?
If they use delivered tables, they will be.
Okay.
We'll repeat his answer.
Custom fields, they may not be, but we are trying to convert them.
Okay, so we are trying to convert all of the queries from 8.4 into 9.2. There may be an issue if you are using tables outside of the delivered tables to create your queries. But I would say stay tuned on that they're working on that. Another question, where can I find learning resources? That is going to be on our website, which you'll see at the end of this today. If you add an item to either links or favorites and then later don't want it anymore, can you delete it? Absolutely. We have a we have a guide on how to personalize your work center. And in that, we actually show you how you can delete things. It's pretty simple to delete something from your work center that you just use the minus sign next to it when you go into that personalized link. But we do have a guide available. What type of learning resources do we have, and are they available now? We have lots of resources. We have feature videos, which you probably have seen because those have been coming out in our blog posts. We have how-to videos, and we also have guides. So our guides include step-by-step guides and quick reference guides. Some of them are available now. If you go to our website, you're going to see what we do have available, and then you'll also see what we have planned. And what we have planned, you'll just see a coming soon listed next to it. Who do you contact if you can't log into Fin 9.2? I'm assuming your question means with Go Live and not referring to the testing environment. But with Go Live, you can contact our Finance and Procurement Help Desk if you have issues logging into Fin 9.2. Will it be as easy to remove a link as to add one? It's a pretty straightforward process, and we do have a guide available on how to add a link to your work center. Personally, I think it's easier to delete it than it is to add it. And the only reason for that is when you go to add it, if it's a place within the finance system, you have to navigate through the menu to find what it is you're looking for to get it on there. But once you get it on there, it's super easy to delete it. Another question, will the FinPro help desk be able to help after go live? Yes, they will be able to help you. You can contact them via email, phone, or chat. Another great question, do I have to use the Work Center or can I just navigate as usual? You do not have to use the Work Center. You can just navigate as usual. I actually discovered a trick the other day to help me with things. Is what I really like when you go to something within the finance system now, you can actually see the breadcrumb navigation across the top of your screen. So it shows you exactly how you got to where you were going.
Another question about logging in, will we still access through the portal?
And the answer to that is yes, you will still access the finance system through the portal. I'm sure you've seen the new video that's out there about changes that are coming to the portal. So it may be in a slightly different place, but you will still access it through the portal.
Any other questions before we move on? Give you guys a second to type it up in case. We're also going to have another chance toward the end of the webinar to ask questions. We do have some more content before then.
Okay, go ahead and, we'll go ahead and move on. So I love this cartoon. It says, I think I've discovered the bottleneck. Now the reason why I put this in there is right now in 8.4, if you have something that needs to be approved, you have to email your approver or call them and let them know that it's not out there. If you don't do that, you could have these transactions just sitting out there waiting to get approved, and they're just not getting approved. So in 9.2, we have something that's called workflow. So workflow refers to any transaction that requires approval. This is how it's going to actually be routed through the system to be approved. That means that when you create a transaction that needs approval, you'll actually submit it through the system. And then when you do that, the system's going to send an email notification to your approver letting them know that the transaction's out there for them to approve it. In addition to that, this transaction is going to go on their work list. So what your work list is it's a list of work items awaiting action by you. Where you'll get to that is when you log into 9.2. So if you're an approver, let's say that you get this email saying that someone submitted a journal to you, for example, for approval. You'll log into the system, and then you're going to go to your work list on the upper right-hand corner of your screen. When you go to your work list here, you're going to see a list of the transactions that are awaiting approval by you. There's a few things that you can do with this. So for example, all of these columns can be sorted. So if you want to see the most recent transaction that was submitted to you, you would just double click on this date from column, and then that would go ahead and bring the most recent transaction up to you. You can also link directly to the transaction from this page. So you would just click on the link to it here, and then you're going to come to an approval page. Now the approval page here highlights another new feature that's available in 9.2, and that is attachments. So with attachments, you can actually attach supporting documentation to a transaction right in the system. So right now when I ask people how they're doing it, how they're getting supporting documentation to their approver, typically the response is, well, I'm emailing it to them. So what they're going to do now is they're going to attach this right to the transaction itself. It is very similar to attaching a document to an email. With attachments, you can add and delete attachments up until a transaction's been posted. Once it's been posted, you can't delete it, but you can keep adding to it. So from here, where you would go is you could click on this attachments link, And then you could click on the link here to see the attachment itself. When you do that, you'll either get a new window or tab, depending on the file type, or a download in the lower left-hand corner. Now, with that, if you try to view an attachment and nothing's happening, check your pop-up blocker, because if your pop-up blocker is on, you won't be able to see the transaction. All different file types can be attached. So I've been able to do a Word file, an Excel file, a PDF, a PNG, a GIF file. And then there is, I believe, a size restriction, but it is so big. So if you do run into an issue with a size limit on your file, just let us know, because as far as I know, no one's been able to break the system yet when it comes to file size. So after you look at your attachments as an approver, you can go to the journal entry page itself. This is a journal entry example. If it were a different type of transaction, it would say go to whatever transaction type. You could click on that to go to the page itself, but where you can actually go is you can click on this journal lines button at the bottom and go ahead and see all the detail for the transaction here. So you wouldn't actually even have to go to the page itself to be able to see everything. From here, you have several options on what you can do with this. So you can click approve. And if you approve it, it's going to come off your work list. Also, something to point out, you see this approval stages area in the middle of your screen here. Each of these boxes in the approval pass area represent one level of approval. So meaning if this transaction required multiple levels of approval, you would see additional boxes here. So if you were just in the first stage of approval and there is another box here, when you clicked approved, it would route it to the next level of approval. The other option you can do here is you can deny the transaction. So you can enter comments as to why you're denying it. And when you do that, it's going to go back on the work list of the person who submitted it to you for approval. There's also this hold button. The purpose of the hold button is if you notice in this approval paths option, you see this multiple approvers listed here. That means that there's more than one person who has the ability to approve this at the first level of approval. So for example, let's say that Mike and I are both the approvers on this transaction. If I have a question on it and I don't click this hold button, Mike could come in and actually approve the transaction that I had a question on. So what I would want to do is I would want to click this hold button. It would remove it from Mike's work list so he wouldn't have the ability to do anything with it. I can get my question answered, and then I can remove the hold and go ahead and approve it. And then here I can also add comments to it. Last but not least, I can click the green plus sign here and add an additional level of approval. Something to keep in mind with that is for transactions that require multiple levels of approval, so for example, anything related to sponsored projects or gift funds, those multiple levels of approval will already be built into the actual workflow itself. Okay, so your work center is a place where you do your work. That's going to be listed on the left-hand side of your screen when you log in. With the Work Center, you can add links to places within the finance system and places outside of the finance system. Workflow refers to the process of how transactions are routed through the system for approval. Something to mention specifically about workflow is that is being set up by each campus. General rule of thumb for that is unless you heard otherwise, whoever is your approver now in 8.4 should still be your approver in 9.2. And then last but not least is a work list is a list of items awaiting your action. So now let's talk about looking things up in the system. So a question that I get frequently about specifically attachments is, well, I'm not an approver, but do I still have the ability to view attachments within the system? And the answer to that is yes. So let's use a journal entry as an example that you aren't an approver, but you want to be able to look up a journal entry and see the attachment on that. You would go ahead and look up the journal the same way you do now. And then on the header page, you would click this attachments link. And when you click that attachments link, you're going to view the attachment the same way that we had done when we were looking at it from the approval page. So this cartoon says, Google, you autocomplete me. One of the improved features in 9.2 is something called menu search. With menu search, it works just like a Google search. You can go to the main menu here, and in the search menu, you can start typing in what you're looking for. And just like Google, the system's going to start giving you a list of things that match what you're typing. And then you can go ahead and click an item off of this. So for example, here I could go ahead and click Create Update Journal Entries. Something that I've been using this for is for things that the navigation has changed. So there are some changes in navigation in 9.2. And so what I've been doing is I've been using the menu search to look for it, and then I add it to my favorites. And then when I click on it from favorites, I can actually see the full navigation path of how to get to it. And so from there, I can go ahead and add it to my work center if I want to. There's also a new feature called Journal Entry Keyword Search. So with keyword search, if you notice here, we're on the Create Update Journal Entries link, and you can see that we have a new tab. In 8.4, you only have the Find an Existing Value tab and in the Add a New Value tab. And in 9.2, you're going to have the Keyword Search tab. When you click on that, you can search by your keyword. Now, this is a very broad search. So what I mean by that is in this example, I've typed in 2 words. I've typed in invoice and I've typed in 253A. If I were to do this search as is, it's going to give me everything that has either invoice in it or 253A in it. If I want to narrow my search and to only return everything that has both invoice and 253A in it, I would use a plus sign between the 2 words here. And then I would go ahead and click search. You get your search results on the right-hand side, and then on the left-hand side, you have filters where you can further narrow your list of results until you find what it is that you're looking for. It also works for vouchers. So same thing, if you go to the voucher page, you'll see this keyword search tab, which is a new tab. When I click on that, same thing, I can type in 2 words here or more. Keep in mind that if I were to do this search as is right now, it would give me a big list of everything that either has Williams or Atlanta in it. If I use the plus sign, it would only give me everything that has both Williams and Atlanta in it. I get my list of results on the right, and then I can further use the filters on the left to continue to filter my results. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mike to do a quick poll.
So this one, instead of being a quiz, is more of a preference question, and that's which search method would you prefer to use? Find an existing value, which was the old way, keyword search, which is a new feature, or it depends on the situation. All right, 95% of you have voted, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and check the results. A third of you seem interested in this new keyword search option, and then the other 2/3 mostly voted for it depends on the situation. So what does that look like? So maybe, Lisa, you can tell us a bit about when you would use which search feature.
Absolutely. So this came up in discussion here when we were learning this new feature, and someone had asked me, well, when would you use one over the other? And I said, well, if I already know my journal ID number, I would just go ahead and look it up the way I do now. I'd go to find an existing value, type in my ID, and then just get the one journal ID returned with it. It would be if I didn't know something that specific about what I was looking for. So if I only knew something, for example, that was in the description, then I would use the keyword search box and then use the filters until I could find what it was that I was looking for. So now let's talk about speed type inquiry. So for any of you who look up speed types in 9.2, the navigation has changed. I actually got pretty excited about this the way when I saw how this is going to work. But if you take a look here, here's a screenshot of how it works in 8.4. And to look up a speed type right now, where you would have to go is go to the general ledger, Chartfields, and then speed type. In 9.2, it's going to be a link listed for you in your work center. So you just click on the speed types link and then type in your speed type to search for it. Something to keep in mind with speed type search is you do want to go off of your work center to look it up. And the reason for that is that actual true navigation to get to that link has changed pretty significantly in 9.2. Another example is someone had asked earlier, well, do I have to work off of my work center? And I had said no. What I would recommend that you do if you don't plan on using your work center is to use that menu search option. So go to the menu search for CU speed types, and then add it to your favorites. And when you do that, you can see the full navigation path of how to get to it. And you'll actually see how much it's changed. But right now, you can just click on it right off of your work center too. It works the same way for Chartfields. Right now, if you want to look up an account, for example, you would have to go to General Ledger, Chartfields, and then Account. In 9.2, you'll see this Chartfields values that's listed right underneath the CU speed types. So then you can click on that and then look for the specific chart field that you're looking for here. And with that, let's just wrap up and go over the 4 things that I really want you to remember from today. And that is your work center, the difference between favorites and links, be able to understand workflow and work lists, and then last but not least, the new way that you're going to look things up in the system. And with that, we'll go ahead and open it up for some questions again.
And a reminder, you can use this box at the bottom of the GoToWebinar control panel to type in your questions. And we actually already have some listed here. So
My control panel is gone.
Oh, okay. So our first question here is, who is able to see attachments on journals? Just approvers or anyone?
So the question, who can see attachments? Actually, anyone can see attachments on a journal.
Another question is, what kinds of files can you upload as attachments?
So with file types, you can pretty much attach anything. I've been able to test a Word file, an Excel file, PDF, PNG, GIF file. So you should be able to attach any file types.
That said, sticking to standard file types like PDF or Word or images like JPEGs is probably a good bet instead of something exotic.
Right.
Another question, do work lists show up on the front page or do you have to go to the work list page?
Can you repeat the question?
Do work lists show up on the front page or do you have to go to the work list page?
Oh, actually, Cal, I need to ask you that question because I know at one point in time we had said that work list items would show up in the My Work section, but I didn't say that today because I think we're still working on that
We are
answer.
still working on getting it on the work center,
Okay,
but
so
it always will be available on that.
Okay, so to answer the question, your transactions will always be on your work list. There is a potential that they may show up in the My Work section of the Work Center. But for now, if you want to be able to see that, guaranteed it will be on your work list.
Great. Another one, can I have a specific person approve my journal entries? Do I need to not submit the journal entry in order to specify a certain approver?
Ooh, so I got really excited because I just went in and talked to Cal last week about different scenarios on what would happen with approvals. So the first scenario is that if someone didn't realize that they actually had to submit the transaction because that's a new step, what would happen? And what would happen is if someone tried to follow what they do right now in 8.4, and that is they get the journal invalid status, and they just let their approver know that it's out there without actually submitting it. The approver could go in and look up the journal, but they would not be able to approve it. So in order to kick off workflow, the journal has to be submitted, and then it will be routed to the approver that is specified. If for some reason the approver that it has been routed to is out of the office or on vacation, you can contact, there will be people within your campus controller's office that you can contact, and they will set up a delegate so that someone else can approve it. If you truly believe that there is an issue with workflow, that the person listed there shouldn't be approving it at all and that it should be someone else entirely, not just temporarily, you would also contact your campus controller's office because that's who is setting up the workflow process currently.
Great. Another one was just a comment. Love the voucher keyword search. Thanks, Jamie. Jamie also has a question here. If I put a journal entry number in the search, will it find it?
Yes, so it will find it. That's a great question. Something to keep in mind, though, is if for some reason that series of numbers shows up somewhere else, like in a description of another journal, then that one will show up as well. So, for example, if you create a new journal to correct an old one and you put the old journal ID number in the reference field, both journals are going to show up when you search for it.
Another one, is there a more involved speed type search? I often search by description and org number.
Yes, that is still being worked on right now. So, for example, if you were to go do an org, if you wanted to look up a speed type associated with a certain org code, you could search by org to find that speed type. I have not seen how this works just yet, but I know that they are working on it.
So Cal is telling us we have that now in our test system.
Okay, great.
So that should be there for go live.
Yes, thank you.
Another question, will I have the same access in 9.2 that I have today?
Yes, unless you have been told otherwise, nothing should be changing with your access from 8.4 to 9.2.
Great. And then another question, if I use Google Chrome as my browser, will the new system work in Google Chrome?
It will, unless you are on a Mac trying to do spreadsheet journals.
So yeah, spreadsheet journals is using special Excel macros offline, so that's why it won't work on a Mac. But otherwise, Google Chrome should work.
I actually use Google Chrome when I teach the journal class and when I document things here, and I haven't had any issues. But I'm using Google Chrome on a PC, not a Mac, when I'm doing the spreadsheet journals.
I don't know the context of this question. Is everything called Chartfield? Does that ring any bells for what that might be about?
Who asked that question? Maybe they could clarify it.
Connie, if you want to, or no, that was Mary. If you want to expand on that question, let us know. Another question, if a transaction is denied, how will the person who initiated it be notified?
Oh, so this is a great question. Because I've found that during teaching the journal class specifically that the people who submit it want an email notification. Right now, what is planned for email notifications is it's only when it's routed for approval, but you can see it on your work list. So if you're the person who submitted the transaction, you can just go to your work list and you can see what the status is, whether it's been approved or denied. And that's something that we're going to be revisiting post go live, is what types of notifications we're going to be the system will be generating.
Another question about browsers. Which browser do you recommend for the use of 9.2?
It's supposed to work in all of them, so I wouldn't recommend one over the other. So it should work in all of your browsers. If you for some reason are getting an issue with the browser, let us know. But I've used Firefox, Chrome, and IE, and it's worked great in all of them.
Another question, can you have the attachment open while you are reviewing the journal entry?
Yes, you can. So when you click on it, it's going to show up as a new tab, a new window, or a download, so you can have both the attachment and the approval page open at the same time.
Yeah, attachments get either downloaded or they're a totally separate window, so you can always go back to that first window and look at your transaction. Another question, I mostly look up reports for the speed types assigned to my department, such as monthly expenditures report. Is there going to be an easy way to do this, or is that a different training?
My clarifying question is, are you using a PeopleSoft report for that, or are you going into, say, the Cognos reporting system for that?
So we can follow up with that, Connie, if you want to give us some more detail. One more comment. I love the webinars. I can listen and also take care of routine matters. Any way to get copies of the slides for later review when we go live? So we do record these, so all the slides and discussion are available on our controller website, and we'll have a link to that later. And Connie followed up and said she uses Cognos.
Okay, I'm really glad that you asked that question because I get that a lot too, is there aren't going to be any changes to Cognos in regards to no reports are going away that you use in Cognos. Some new reports are being developed though, so there may be new reports available to you, but you can still use the existing reports that are out there.
Another question, what is the address to look up step-by-steps? So that would just be our controller Elevate site?
Yes.
So it's we'll have it on a slide in a moment, so you can write that down when we show it.
Yes.
Let's see if we have any more. Typing this link in real quick. Any other questions for the good of the order? We'll give you guys a few more seconds in case you're still typing one up. Someone said, thank you so much. Will you post a list of the questions and answers? We should be able to do that.
We're working on an FAQs too.
Yeah, so the FAQ will actually pull from all the webinars. People have been asking really great questions in all of the sessions.
Okay. So as Mike had stated, a recording of this webinar will be provided. So you can get to that on our website. And so let's say on December 9th, you just want to take a look back through this before you go live on the 10th. You can do that from our website. On our website here, you can see that we will have a list of all of our learning resources, such as our how-to videos and our guides. So you can see what's already developed right now, and you can see what we have planned for you all. Here is our website listed here. So you can go to our website, and that's where you can access all of the how-to videos and the guides, the feature videos, the recorded webinars. And then with Go Live, you can also contact the Finance and Procurement Help Desk if you need help. Now, when you go live on December 10th, there is going to be someone from the actual development team will be at each campus for a few days after Go Live. So if you do need help in the system, you can go to, say, a computer lab, or even see if they'd make a house call to stop by and see if they can help you with what you're having an issue with in the new system. And with that, I'd just like to thank everyone so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.